Hello and welcome to Great Fightbacks in association with Dunlop. I'm Damien Smith and I'm joined by racing legend Johnny Herbert and Giles Richards from The Guardian to discuss 10 of the greatest fightback stories from motorsport history. These stories of commitment, determination and resilience are inspired by racers from different motorsports, but with the same shared belief that giving up is never an option. Let's begin with our first story, Louis Rosier's remarkable Le Mans win of 1950. This is a father and son story. He drove for 23 and a half of the 24 hours. I mean, Johnny, first of all, can you imagine driving for that long at Le Mans?
No, I don't want to. I think for that length of time, I think it's pretty amazing.
The concentration he must have needed to go through the afternoon as the sun's going down.
And it gets into your eyes as well, so that's something you've got to deal with. Then it goes dark, then you've got to deal with all that at the same time.
Included in this great marathon stint of driving, he's hit by an owl.
Yeah.
It smashes his goggles, it injures him. He had to come back, catch up 4 hours, take the lead and win the race. All of that effectively on his own.
Giles, the fight-back element to this incredible Grand Prix was, of course, that Jackie was driving, it's hard to believe these days, with a broken arm.
Yes, it's an absolutely incredible feat, and it's what defines the great drivers, is that not only they can win races, but win the really great races, having to handle an impairment. And in his case, it was a broken wrist. He'd had the plaster removed and had a doctor set it with a plastic splint with his arm covered in Vaseline to give him some form of comfort. Now, he not only took this impairment into the race, it was in torrential rain. He ultimately won by 4 minutes.
He started 6th on the grid, got a great start. Then he was able to pick them off with visibility that was within about 5 metres in front of his nose. The Nürburgring, it's like that, and then the trees are just up there as well. So it all hangs all in those trees basically for the whole lap. And it won't be just rain that he's going to have to cope with. It's going to be fog.
1977, I think for many people, was perhaps the defining moment in terms of an individual performance from Jackie that he put in at Le Mans.
Well, this is what's so great about both the Le Mans 24 and Jackie X. At about 9 a.m, they took the lead back from 41st position. So they then reached the final hour when this mechanical problem occurred. Jackie, having come back against all the odds, this in his bid to win Le Mans for the 4th time and the 3rd in a row, has to sit and watch while they see if Jürgen can nurse the car round in a certain time just to take the line. This final lap, absolutely crucial and incredibly tense for Jackie. Jürgen does it, they all take the win. What a comeback.
For many, Mike Hailwood is the greatest motorcycle racer of all time. But in 1978, he'd been out of the two-wheel game for more than a decade. And people really didn't think he had a chance.
You know, we're talking about the Isle of Man TT. We're talking about not a normal track at all. Even though he was out for so long, was it 10, 11 years, it was still there, the feeling of a bike, and he was still able to get the best from it. You've got to have that feel.
He was a pretty handy car driver as well, wasn't he?
He certainly was. He made the switch into F1 and F2, and this is what makes his comeback at the TT so incredible, because he'd had a bad accident in 1974, and having retired from bikes in 67 and then having the accident coming back in 78 was an extraordinary feat.
We turn to 1991 and the Le Mans 24 hours once again. This time it's Johnny's day, the longest day for you, Johnny. 3 years after the accident that changed your life. How do you look back on that race all these years later?
It was a point in my career where I felt I needed to prove to other people that the feet were actually strong enough to continue in Formula 1 without a problem. We had this cunning plan at the beginning. We were Formula 1 drivers. We drive it like generally you never used to drive Le Mans previously, which was flat out. We didn't realistically think we'd have a chance of winning. But as things went on, we realised that we were conserving fuel, and that enabled us to go much longer. I got in the car thinking I was going to do 2 stints. They asked me to finish off the race, and I never got to the podium, unfortunately. But it's a wonderful memory, you know.
Johnny, you know how brutal Formula 1 can be and what it's like to have to reinvent yourself in a different format in the sport. What do you think of Bernd Schneider?
He knew Formula 1 was not going to happen, but the determination that he had to succeed in a very different type of formula than he was dreaming of as a young boy, but the ability to be able to change his driving style, to to make it suit those cars, and then of course then that success came his way.
It is so easy to not make it in Formula One and just disappear from the scene and not go on to other things. And what Bernd did, he made this absolute new career for himself at the top of the sports car industry.
Johnny, you know Pedro well. You were his teammate when he had his, again, a career-defining accident at Silverstone. Tell us a little bit about that.
I remember following, going through Abbey, and as he went out of sight, I just noticed a movement of something. And as I got round the corner, all there was under the bridge was an engine, smoking engine. So I sort of slammed on the brakes and stopped, got out of the car. There's a little tunnel, pedestrian tunnel. But as I walked past it, not thinking anything's going to be there, corner of my eye again, I see a flame. And 20 metres in the tunnel was a Lotus. He slumped like that. His legs are like on a deck chair. They're crossed like that. I'm with him and I'm thinking, come on, move, do something. And then luckily as the smoke went, he opened his eyes. And I have never seen eyes like it. They were on stalks. But we laugh about it now.
Yeah.
And it's the character I think you need to sometimes is laugh about those bad times.
Yeah.
But like him himself, he was still able to have a great career in GT racing.
In 2010, Marc Marquez was an explosive new talent. At Estoril, at just 17 years old, he gave an early sign to the world of what he was capable of. Giles, the story here is that he crashed on the warm-up lap.
Incredibly, his mechanics and other mechanics from other teams fixed his bike in 9 minutes, but it wasn't quick enough to get him back to his starting place on the grid, so he had to start from the back. At the end of the first corner, he's in third place. On the final lap, he takes the lead and wins. I mean, obviously there is an element here of youth and exuberance. But yes, the self-belief, again, that one has to have, that I can start from the back of the grid, but I expect to win this race.
Giles, you were there in 2014. What do you remember about this race in particular and the incredible comeback?
They'd had a double setback because on the Wednesday, and Jota suddenly had to get a third driver in, and they phoned Oliver Turvey. He was thrown into it alongside Harry Tinknell, who was a rookie in his first year. I mean, all the odds are saying you can't do this. And then they had a series of small mechanical problems which put them back to the third timing scrape. Now at Le Mans, that's back of the grid area, and came back and won.
Johnny, put yourself in Turvey's shoes. You're at home, depressed because you haven't got a Le Mans drive. His drive had fallen out a week earlier. Suddenly you get the call and you're on a plane down to Le Mans. What are you thinking?
I'm going to do a good job. This is my chance. This is my opportunity. And that's exactly what Oliver was able to do. And that's what a top-class driver should be able to do, because things don't always go the way you want them to sometimes. But if you have an opportunity, you've got to grab it.
John McGuinness is the modern king of the Isle of Man TT. But in 2014 he failed to win a race, and we began to wonder, were the best days behind him? He answered that question in emphatic fashion in 2015 by winning his 23rd TT.
He's a brilliant character, a wacky sense of humour that he's got. He's got a passion for the sport. But I think the biggest thing is the mentality that drives you to want to go back for that challenge.
In his mind, he knew he could do it. And he said, I just wanted to push. And that's what he did. And that's when it all came back, all that experience.
There you have it, a fascinating debate about 10 great fightbacks. I hope you've enjoyed watching, and you can find out more about these incredible stories at greatfightbacks.com. There you can vote for your favourite. Thank you to my guests, Johnny Herbert and Giles Richards, and many thanks for watching. Goodbye.